Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. We're here in the Nurgle Wastes, gonna be taking the Warriors of Chaos up against Bretonnia. And today I wanted to kick off a discussion about Bretonnia. I'm gonna be having a few upcoming vids regarding them, and kind of just discussing the state of Bretonnia right now. A lot of people think they're very underpowered, and I tend to agree. I do think they could definitely use some help. We'll see if we can come up with some concrete solutions, but I also think that people may not be necessarily playing them correctly, or at least how I see them being played correctly. And we'll kind of go through all that in upcoming videos. So this first video is kind of a showcase of what I think some of the issues with Bretonnia are. So I've got a Chaos, very good Chaos build against Bretonnia in my opinion. We've got Kolek, Sun Eater. Previously, this guy was a huge gamble in this matchup because if they brought Royal Pegasus Knights, one or two charges, if all of the unit models made contact, Kolek would die very fast. Unfortunately, the way that they've changed Pegasus Knights and their pathing, all of them can't connect on the charge like they used to be able to, so they really can't focus down Kolek like they, used to be able to. So he's, pretty good in this matchup. Great against Cav, Flying Lords. He can beat up any Griffin or Hippogriff any day. So very strong in this matchup. To support him, we've got a Shadowcaster here. I know someone in the comments was asking me about Lore of Shadows, and I do very much like this lore. You see it a lot in high-level tournament play, and I can definitely see why. So let's talk through what I've got here. Occam's Mindrazor gives 40% weapon and armor-piercing damage, as well as magical damage, and that is the critical component, is that magic damage. It's going to be very, very good against things like Grail Knights, up against the High Elves, Phoenix Guard, Dragon Princes, anything like that. It's going to be really, really strong against, especially when you put it on somebody like Kolek or these guys on the other side. We've got a unit of Dragon Ogres here, supported by some Poison Warhounds. This is one of my favorite combos in the game. It costs more than a Shaggoth, but is better against traditional cavalry, in my opinion. Of course, you'll be seeing a lot of that up against Bretonnia. So we do have some action kicking off underway over here. I've got two units of Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes harassing these Pegasus Knights and this Lord here. We've also got two Chaos Warriors with Halberds kind of supporting out on each flank. We've got Forsaken as well, two of those again out on the flanks. The center is 4 Chaos Marauders and 1 more Forsaken. And yeah, that's about it for my build. My opponent, again, got the Lord and these Pegasus Knights here that are currently charging into these Marauders with the Halberd so close on station. Probably not a super advisable, course of action here, but they're going to be able to do some damage to those Marauders. My opponent's brought a very large, very heavy infantry, peasant force, which was kind of the old school logic in Total War Warhammer 1. So we'll go through his infantry corps here. He's got 1, 2, 3 Battle Pilgrims. Looks like 1, 2 Foot Squires here, and looks like that's about it. Spearmen at Arms, 1 on each flank, and it looks like 1 Peasant Mob in the center, as well as 1 Men at Arms with shields. He's also got out on this flank 2 units of Questing Knights for some armor-piercing damage, and a Spearman at Arm defending this Field Trebuchet here. So, very good stuff. I say good stuff. Battle Pilgrims are actually a unit that I really am not a fan of right now. They're just not cost-effective in any way, shape, or form. Only 30 armor. They have no bonus versus infantry. 35 weapon strength is decent. It's not great, but it's decent. 40 melee attack is pretty decent. 28 melee defense, though, is kind of subpar for a unit of this cost, and only 19 charge bonus is pretty underwhelming for a quote-unquote damage dealer type unit. I know these guys aren't technically, doesn't have that in their unit card, but they do, in my opinion, kind of fall into that class, or at least they should. Foot Squires are another unit that are only cost effective in very niche situations. Their combat stats are very poor. 25 attack and 20 defense is just subpar in every way, shape, and form. They do have a nice bonus versus infantry of 8, which is, again, it's not a whole lot, but it does help them against infantry. But even then, I mean, that's not going to augment them a whole lot, and they're just subpar combat stats. I mean, they really get outclassed. 70 armor is okay. It's not great. But, it'll help mitigate some damage, but just the lack of combat stats on these guys means they'll trade very ineffectively in most situations. Spearmen at Arm with shields, I actually do like these guys a bit. They have 34 melee defense for a unit this cheap, is pretty nice. Same thing with the Spearmen at Arms with shields. The regular Spearmen at Arms have 30 melee defense as well, but of course no missile block chance on these guys. Field Trebuchet can be a decent pick in certain matchups if you're expecting armored infantry. It actually can be a bit of a stealth pick. The Blessed Field Trebuchet in particular is very good against the High Elves because you will very likely see Phoenix Guard in this particular matchup. Oh, in that matchup, I should say. Not in this matchup. In this matchup, I would probably cheap out and go with the regular Field Trebuchet. But that's just my opinion. And the final piece of the puzzle here that I want to just quickly discuss as the battle kind of gets underway here is the Questing Knights. So, Questing Knights, again, 80 armor. These guys actually have pretty decent combat stats. At 38 attack and 36 defense, they can kind of act as a frontline unit. They also do pretty decent armor-piercing damage and have an okay charge bonus. They're also immune to psychology. They have anti-infantry in their tooltip, but keep in mind they do not have a true bonus versus infantry, only armor-piercing weapon strength. So they're a pretty decent unit. The issue is they're just only 80 armor is not the best for a heavy cavalry unit. Most heavy cavalry units in the game are better, and they don't have any mitigation stats like physical resistance or anything like that. So they're alright. Questing Knights are decent, but we'll talk through what I like to bring in, you know, as Bretonnia in a later video, but let's go ahead and kick this particular battle underway. We've been able to catch out the Lord here over on this side, and I actually have missed it, but he has Occam's Mindrazor, and he has pretty much single-handedly done all of the damage to this Lord in a very short span of time. You can see we've been in slow motion this entire time, and in that short span of time, Kolek was able to just absolutely put a beating on this Lord and force him over away this way. So that's why I bring the Shadowcaster. The Enfeebling Foe as well that I brought with him will be great against the Lord, you know, kind of debuffing his melee stats. I've also brought Occam's Mindrazor to help slow down and damage cavalry, especially things like Grail Knights and such. If they're cycle charging in and out, that Milk Cost Mystifying Miasma can make it much harder for them to do so. But across this mainline engagement, these Bretonnian infantry are just losing out hardcore to their Chaos counterparts. You can see Battle Pilgrims getting wrapped here in the center, and Men-at-Arms with Shields, although they are a reasonably cost-effective unit, they will get outclassed by Chaos Marauders here in the center, and Forsaken as well are absolutely going to cut these Battle Pilgrims to pieces. So this battle's definitely going to go to Chaos, and kind of exemplifies some of the issues with the traditional thinking of Bretonnia from the last game. They're definitely going to be in for a rough time. These Dragon Ogres have gotten into these Questing Knights here and just absolutely messed them up. Of course, Dragon Ogres have anti-large armor piercing, and the reason I like these guys with the Hounds better than a Shaggoth, another Shaggoth, although another Shaggoth can be preferable in certain situations, these guys can actually pin units down better because monstrous units got more entity models in Mortal Empires. That also includes Dragon Ogres, so they actually have more unit models now. They can kind of get a nice surround and wrap guys up, especially with the poison from the Warhounds. They're very hard to get away from. They deal a ton of anti-large armor piercing damage. Very, very strong units, and yeah, definitely a big fan. So you can see, we'll just kind of grab some cinematic action here of these Bretonnian forces as they are kind of wrapped up here. You can see the balance of power starting to shift pretty heavily in my favor. My opponent gamely holding out, though. Kolek has got his sights set on this Lord here, and he's going to have to turn tail and run. I am a little bit late on my cast of Occam's Mindrazor here. Since there's no physical resistance units, I figured I would just use it to buff Kolek. But if we look, his weapon strength is up to 756, not including the bonus versus large from that Occam's Mindrazor, 567 of which is armor piercing. So that's more weapon strength than most Lords in the game, just in pure armor piercing damage. That's why I bring Occam's Mindrazor. And for those of you asking, yes, Lore of Shadows debuffs and buffs are incredibly useful, especially in situations like this. You know, Shadowcaster is just kind of running around here cackling, and he's definitely been doing a good job of just dropping that, you know, the Milk Cost Mystifying Miasma, that Enfeebling Foe, and the Occam's Mindrazor. All very good spells. Pit of Shades is not great. Other Vortex spells are better. The Penumbral Pendulum, a bit of a tongue twister there. Penumbral Pendulum can be very useful in certain situations as well, as can the Withering. Lore of Shadows is actually one of the best lores of magic in the game right now, in my opinion, just from a toolkit standpoint. Buffs and debuffs are all very good. Pretty much the only spell I would say that's not wildly useful is Pit of Shades, and even then, I mean, obviously in campaign it'll be very useful against the AI, and, you know, it's still a fun spell, very cinematic. But we are going to get Lord of the Storm coming down to bombard some of these foot squires here. They're just soaked in with cheap marauders, so I don't mind them taking the fire here. And Kolek's bringing the hammer down on this Lord here, so my opponent is going to admit defeat, and well played to him. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that. This kind of kicks off my Bretonnia discussion. Tomorrow we'll be looking at some testing with Bretonnia that I did, kind of showcasing how they stack up in an infantry engagement up against the Skaven, which I'm kind of using as the baseline in that test. And we'll also look at some testing against the High Elves as well, see if we can't figure out, you know, kind of where Bretonnia stacks up and what's the best way, the most optimal way to use them in the current patch, because obviously we haven't had any balance changes in the Reprisal update, and we're not getting any balance changes until at least January when the Tomb Kings are coming out. So yeah, we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, well played to my opponent here. In terms of the army breakdown in this particular matchup, Kolek is MVP here because of the change to Pegasus Knights. He can last a lot longer, and, you know, Grail Knights could potentially put a beating on him, but we'll talk about that on another day. That's why I bring this Shadow Sorcerer buddy here. He's got, the, of course, the Enfeebling Foe to debuff melee attack and defense. Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma and Occam's Mind Razor, all very good spells. Marauders did pretty decently. Some of them, in some certain cases, racked up a lot of kills against peasant infantry. Forsaken just cleaning house, and the Forsaken are going to be very good against, you know, Bretonnian infantry in this matchup. You don't want to just spam them out, but, you know, 2 to 4 are definitely going to be very good here. The Chaos Warriors with Halberds didn't need to do a whole lot, but they, you know, held their own there. Marauders with the Throwing Axes did their job of kind of baiting out that early engagement with those Pegasus Knights. They definitely should not have taken that engagement on the ground, but, you know, it is what it is. Dragon Ogres doing their anti-cav roll very well also. So well played to my opponent. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that battle. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'm keeping it coming with more Total War Warhammer 2 content every single day, so stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.